So, Skywalk SAGE. This is not a two-liner review because this is my first two-liner. This is somebody who flew EN-B until now, Skywalk ARAK, and now moved to EN-C two-liner. So, my first two-liner, Skywalk SAGE. The first impression when you open it from the bag is the quality of, I think it's a beautiful wing, and the light constructions. This wing is very light. But where I live, there is always wind. So the handling in strong wind is quite difficult, challenging, and you need to be very gentle and precise with how you handle and lay out the wing on the takeoff. The wing is very long and the tips always tend to fly and flap around on takeoff, and even to get a proper wall, it's sometimes challenging. The lines are unsheeted, which give you less drag, but it's a nightmare to handle with them. There is always a pressure knot hiding from you, and even the small grass on takeoff tends to get stuck on the lines. So you need to be extra careful handling the lines and make sure you don't have any knots. Immediately when I inflate the wing, I felt it pretty intuitive. It's worked pretty similar to any other glider I ground handle, but with a small difference. First thing you notice is the length of the brakes. They are a little bit longer as expected as a two-liner. The main thing I notice is it doesn't take a lot of brake to stall one of the tips, which means you need to be very precise and gentle with the brakes input when you take off. I try to take it to the edge and understand how much brake I can use before I lose control of the wing. I'm not sure if it's only the two-liner constructions or they added a reflex profile, but even on the ground the wing is very stable and collapse resistant. In general, it feels very precise and every input you make immediately affects the wing. Generally, I understand that I don't need to do a lot of inputs to compare to my B-wing, I just need to make them the correct timing and in precise amount. So the build quality is pretty amazing. It feels like there is no extra material on the construction of the wing. Everything is very minimalist, narrow, which makes dealing with the wing very clear and very intuitive, because there is not a lot of mess around. You have only two risers with not a lot of strings and everything is very clear. The brakes are also much more minimalist than it used to. I thought it's not going to be comfortable, but it's just the right amount that it's comfortable in your hand in both styles of grip. On the B risers, you have the B bars, which are very comfortable. Overall, I like the construction. I like that it's straightforward, not extra material, and everything that it needs to be there, and the rest is not. So on takeoff, the wing usually have a tendency to overshoot you a little bit, so you do need to apply a little bit of brake input to catch the surge. I did notice that this wing have much more lift when it go above your head. It depends of the wind, but usually after 3 steps I already feel the push upwards and I'm already in the air. On light wind, it's very easy to handle the wing. Because of the light constructions, the takeoff is very easy and you don't need a lot of strength to take it up. On strong wind, it's much more harder. You need to be very precise with how do you lay out the wing on takeoff and also how do you inflate it. Usually I inflate it from the side with crowbar launch, which I did notice it's much more technical. I guess because of the aspect ratio, you need to be very careful and very precise with your brakes and with your body movement. So right after takeoff, the first thing that I notice is the length difference of the brakes. They are longer than my B-wing, but not too long. It's comfortable in both grip styles. Once you reach the point of contact, it feels different. The brakes feel heavier and requires much more strength to pull them. But the moment you apply the brakes, the magic starts to happen. Every slight pull of the brake translates beautifully into wing behavior. You feel that you have all the control in your hands with a very small range of motion. The brakes really feel like extension of your arms. After some time flying, the second thing I noticed is how it's cut through the air, which is one of the biggest changes I felt between the B glider and the C glider. During the first few hours, it felt very strange. I felt like I couldn't really understand what is the air doing that day. I felt like I lost the sensitivity to read all the small bumps and all the small thermals and the language of the wing. Now overall, after 20 hours of flying it, I understand that the language is pretty much the same. It's just a different dialect. It took me some time to sharpen my senses because you really need to listen much more carefully with what the air is doing. you have so much pressure under the canopy that most of the small bumps are gone. So the way you're reading the air mass and the thermals is very different. The weight shift with this wing and with this harness, it's pretty amazing. This wing is very agile. It took me some time to understand that I'm overusing my weight shift and I'm always moving around, not on purpose. The slightest movement of your hips make the wing turn, which is very good for roll management on thermals or even just turning with less brake inputs. This wing is very fun and very easy to handle with weight shift. I just needed to get used to be more sensitive so I don't overuse it when I'm flying straight. I can see the ocean now. Wow. Okay, chill. Sit the fuck down. Because of the aspect ratio, the wing is much more longer and snaky. That means that she's moving a lot through the air above your head. It will take me a lot of time to get used to it, and you need much more active piloting to make sure the wing stays stable. Another difference was how the wing turns and moves in the air. The turning radius is very different. At first I thought it would be harder to turn like that. But in strong, narrow thermals, the wings still give you amazing performance and good turns. It was on the weak thermals I thought it would be harder to thermal with this aspect ratio. But surprisingly, even when I turned flat, float through very soft thermals, and actually it worked very good. One of the things that scare me moving to a two-liner. But to my surprise, the flight was very intuitive. I feel I need to give attention to both sides, not just one because of the big aspect ratio. Even with the ARAK, I always flew actively and braked when needed. But with this wing, I'd say inputs need to be much more precise. It took me some time to read the language of the wing, so most of the time I was delayed with my actions. I had a lot of pressure losses and small tips collapse. Eventually, I was always feeling the pressure lost. But at least for the first 10 hours, I always had delays because I wasn't sensitive enough for the feeling. But overall, the active piloting is pretty intuitive. I guess because the brakes inputs are very sensitive and every time you do some small input, it's right away affect the wing and it's easy to catch the surge with the inside brake or the outside brakes while thermaling. Okay, I guess you don't want me to go left, so I go right. Yes, thank you. You're the best. Speed bar, the reason why we all here. It wasn't a big surprise that the moment you push the speed bar, you fly like a rocket. I was most surprised that I still have amazing glide ratio, even when I half accelerate or even when I push full bar. I feel much more safe flying a wing with that speed, so I can escape sketchy situations. For me, the biggest difference having a two-liner and this kind of speed, it's the B handling. It took me some time to understand how the B handle works. After I push half speed bar and even full speed bar for some hours, I understand how amazingly I can control all my speed and all my turns while accelerated with the B risers. It's a different feeling, but of course you can catch some of the surge and pressure losses with the B risers, but you can also control the speed range while accelerated. You can come back to trim if needed, and you can also do amazing turns while accelerated for some fun playing above the hill. You do get a different kind of feedback when you're using the B handles. You cut through the air, so I guess only the big bumps you really feel it on the B handles. I did find that while I'm moving back from the speed bar back to the brakes, I have maybe 1 second that I'm blind. Because while flying accelerated, you hold the brake toggles in your hand, and when you want to use your brakes, you need to catch it with a half wrap or with a classic hold. It takes you a second that you need to catch the brakes. So in that seconds, you're basically blind. If something happened in that second, it will take you time to respond, and I need to take it in consideration. This is a crazy machine, really. Just fucking crazy. The glide. One of the biggest improvements moving up to a two-liner C. Now finally I can cut through the air and glide wherever I want. When you're flying up at cloud base, it's a big advantage to glide far away. But when you are trying to land, it's much more dangerous. I knew that my glide is much better, so I tried to approach the landing very carefully. At first I was trying to top land. It took me a lot of tries to land successfully. Every time that I tried to land, I was overshooting and didn't manage to quite top land. The glide was too good, and every time I needed to come much lower and much from the back to successfully top land. But that was fine, because on top landing you can always go out. On regular landing, I took much more spares. I knew that I can easily overshoot the landing fields, and as you can see, there is no much spares in this landing field. So I came very low and tried to understand how much glide I glide with this wing. So to sum up, I would say that the landing needs extra attention so you not overshoot and hurt yourself. So on this wing manual, it says that if you want to use a descent technique, you need to use or spiral dive or B3 ears. I tried for the first time the B3 ears, which was a little bit scary. It felt very different from big ears. First time I pulled, I was pretty nervous and I didn't apply speed system. For this maneuver, you need to be accelerated at least half and then pull the B3s. It still feels like the wind's going backwards and try to stall, but if you push it hard and not doing it during a pitch, it's completely fine. I did try also to pull the big ears, which feels like this wing doesn't want to do, but it's possible. For the spiral dive, it was pretty much the same as any other wing. A lot of energy, a lot of G-force and good descent rate. I don't like to go nose down. For me, 45 degrees, it's enough. So on the SAV section, I will start with that I don't think I have enough experience generally and enough experience with this wing on an SAV to have a strong opinion. I did manage to do only 2 days of SAV above Garda, which is definitely not enough. But I can still tell you about how I felt during those 2 days. The first thing that I noticed is how much more energy the wing stores in the system, and more surprisingly, how much more energy it keeps in its system when you try to exit a maneuver. Whenever I try to rapid exit, it shoots so hard up, and then the shoot down, it's much more aggressive. The first day I was pretty overwhelmed by this feeling, and I did a lot of mistakes from having too much energy and manage it in the wrong way. The point of spin felt pretty much the same, but of course with much more energy. You have bigger span, and when you start a point of spin, you feel all these big winds start to stall, and then the shoot is much more harder. But overall, after a couple of times I did it, I felt the stall point and I managed to do it pretty good. So, let's talk about the stalls. So the stall points is pretty obvious, but I did overstall it, mainly because I didn't let go of my hands and I stalled it a little bit too much. It wasn't so bad, but the shape of the wing was more than 45 degrees. After the stall, finding the backfly was pretty easy, and when I did quick stalls, which means I stalled the wing with the pendulum, when the wing passed my head I let go, it was fairly okay. But when I tried to stay in the backfly and understand it better, I didn't quite manage it. I felt like there is a lot of kinds of backfly in this wing, and to finding the sweet spot it's a little bit harder. The biggest mistake happened to me in this SAV occurred while doing the stalls. I'm pretty happy that it happened to me because I did manage to practice real emergency situation. I did a stall and entered the backfly. I did find the sweet spot on the backfly, but I wanted to find where is the upper limit, where is the backfly getting not stable. I raised my hand slowly, but I was unsymmetrical with the hands, with my body weight, and I was a little bit too high. Immediately the wing spins and throw me to a twist. I was overwhelmed with the twist and I was afraid I will get more twisted. So I decided to raise my hands and deal with the twist, and then I will manage the wing later. I did open the twist just to discover a huge cravat. It was very hard to keep my direction. I used all my body weight and counter brake just to keep direction. It was just enough, but still every time I had a small pitch, the wing stalls. I realized I can't keep direction anymore and I have two options. The first option is to spin that cravat out, and the second option is to come back to a full stall and backfly out of it. I still had a lot of altitude, so I choose to try to spin it out. After a couple of attempts it works, and with a huge spin it works and the wing fly away safely.